free to join. So there is a QR code, you can scan it. And so you'll be getting access to all these meetups, and also there is a content online where you'll be getting access. And we'll have 2 monthly meetings. So all the monthly meetings are around computing. And if anybody wants to present, they can present their ideas to speaker@sfacm Bay Area, sfacmchapter.org. So we'll share that as well. And the topics we usually prefer are like general computing, data science, and networking, and also job hiring announcements, all those things. And we also have food. So it's an optional $2 per slice. So feel free to contribute that. And I think we mentioned the same in our meetup link as well. And thanks to location sponsor, Valley Research Park, our long-term partner here. And we have today's sponsors like RXM, Cloud Native AI and Training Consulting. They provide training and certifications and consulting services. So they have like corporate open enrollment specialized in AI, ML, and also CK, DCK, CKS, and more certifications they offer. And they also offer consulting services like advising, DevOps, platform engineering builds, and R&D staffing as well. And the other sponsor today, Front Egg. So they have out-of-box low-code identity. Their out-of-box low-code identity platform. Feel free to check up their site, and also you can scan the QR code to learn more. And participants online, you can use the chat in the Zoom to ask the questions, so that we will be surfacing your question here, so that your question will get answered. And yep, and we're also looking for volunteers who can join us and help in a couple of activities like membership services, and also online membership capability, and marketing and promoting the membership benefits in SF Bay ACM. So if you are interested in volunteering, in the sign up sheet which you have done, you can either ping us in the chat if you are online, or in person. In the sign up sheet there is a volunteer option. You can feel free to put opt yes there. And anybody wants to make any announcements in the audience, like if your company is hiring, or any local talks or any events? So we'll give a minute. If anybody wants to in person, or anybody online, if anybody wants to make any announcement, feel free to come forward and you can use the stage. Yep. So we have someone to make announcement here.
Hi there, my name is Swift. My company is Quantum Manufacturing in Fremont. They're hiring lots of test engineer, hardware engineer right now.
That was it. Thank you. Thank you so much. So probably we can share those company details in the meetup chat, post meetup. So, and these are the upcoming ACM events. So on Jan 22nd, we have an event. Feel free to join. And these events are all they're also posted in our ACM Bay Area chapter webpage as well. Feel free to check the site. And so without further ado, so we will be giving control to Saurabh. So Saurabh is a senior site reliability engineer at Google, where he focuses on designing and optimizing web scale infrastructures for resilience and high performance. With over a decade of experience in site reliability engineering and distributed systems, Saurabh specializes in building reliable systems through robust infrastructure automation, comprehensive observability, and scalable automation. Prior to his work at Google, Saurabh gained valuable experience as an SRE at Okta. He is also a thought leader in SRE space and cloud technologies, a mentor for startup entrepreneurs through the Google for Startup program, and a frequent speaker on the topic of foundational thinking for scalable and reliable system infrastructure. And now our talk begins. So, yeah.
So yes, quick recap. we were chatting about a 2 a.m. page and how that really goes off. How do you basically deal with that page and the situations around it? So you're on call for whatever critical service it is, and you get paged at 2 a.m. at night. You wake up, you assume this is a critical service, you start looking at the run books. You're not able to figure out what this page is for. There's no run book for it. The person who might have updated this run book has left 18 months ago. So you don't have a right way to basically contact the owner. You cannot really figure out what this alert is supposed to do or whether it's even monitoring the right thing. But because it's a page, you have to take some action and you have to ensure you're looking at the right thing. So you start looking at the monitoring dashboards. You stumble on like few monitoring dashboards which are full dense red, and you have no way of distinguishing what that really means because there's hardly any information on the dashboard. This was probably some old legacy service which should have got deprecated, but which was still lying around. And then no one really has been looking at it for a while. And it has been running, it has been serving production traffic. People have been getting served. So somehow now your only option is going back maybe to your secondary on caller and waking him up and taking his help to figure out what is really going on here. The on-caller gets online after like 5 minutes, 10 minutes. He's like, oh, damn, what is this? Um, he's like, oh, this probably looks dependent on some legacy auth service, which we haven't really touched for a while, but it does have some production traffic. And he has no way of basically coming up with a solution. Obviously, he probably has joined like 1 or 2 years ago along with you. So there's no great way of figuring out what's really going on here. Somehow you decide to mitigate this solution by restarting one of the services or one of the servers, whatever, bring up whatever the pod node, uh, and looks like the service starts working back again. Then you expand on your mitigation strategy. You bring the service back on all the whatever clusters you had, and then suddenly your dashboards are green again. What I was talking here was this is not a hypothetical scenario, and I just want to connect another personal experience I had some with something similar. It's my previous job. I was on call for a service. Unfortunately, we didn't had a coverage at night, and I was actually on call for the entire night. So I was on call for the day and also for the night. This was a small startup, so that was how it works. And we got paid. I got paged at 1 a.m. It was a zookeeper cluster. Some of the nodes going bad. I was trying to figure out what is happening. Suddenly, the service recovered. I was like, wow, this is awesome, great. No need to take any action. Our map is mitigated. Probably it's okay. It's 2 a.m. I'm kind of in a different state of mind. Let's go back to sleep. If it alerts again, I'll probably figure out. At 4 a.m., I get paged again for the same thing. I was like, damn, like what is really going on? But you don't find anything in the logs. There's some replication issue or something, a small bug. You realize like, oh, it should have been addressed. It's not addressed. Go down. You get paged again at 5. Something similar. You are like, I'll probably delete as soon as I'm awake fully. But you have messed up your sleep. And then at 7, I actually got paged for something that was very real. The thing I want to highlight here is the toil that you had to basically go through over the entire night. And when I got paged at 7 a.m., it was a big database spike because of some backend cloud service, backend failure, some EBS failure, and it had a visible customer visible impact. But I was not ready to deal with it because of the toil that I had to go through for this 5 6 hours. Um, this is something again similar. Uh, what I want to highlight here is the operational friction that happens because of this technical debt. And that's what SREs have to deal with on a day to day basis. Oops. So, technical debt for everyone out here is probably a different concept, I would believe. It might look like a brittle code for someone who's a backend engineer. He might feel it's like a missing pieces of unit test cases are missing, you never got to there. Someone might feel, oh, this is like some old bugs which no one really could took a deep care of. From the SRE lenses, it's probably a very different story. It's a more deeper problem to be solved. And even for many of us, it haunts us in a very different way. And I believe most of us would have gone through this scenario sometime or the other. It could be architectural debt. You could have built a monolithic service. There are tightly coupled dependencies. It could be a infrastructural debt, orphaned zombie services, servers running around. No one is really looking at it. It was brought up by someone who has left the company, and then it is just doing its job, and you don't know a playbook to basically fix it after it falls off, and it's burning your real money. Knowledge debt is something that is very important to tackle, and then security debt. So for SREs, the code quality is just a tip of the iceberg. The real threat is the massive hidden operational debt that can really sink your entire service. Uh, so we will try to go and understand what this really means from the SRE lenses. So let's say now I'll try to connect some of the experiences I had. So this operational debt, manual toil, basically restarting a service every Tuesday. Uh, I've been through this scenario where there was a server or a set of servers which were never tackled in the right way. They were never right sized. Their configurations, their optimizations were never looked at because it looked like, this is a low priority service. Let's do it at a later time. And then somehow engineers came up with a exciting strategy where they really went in and they ended up like restarting the service every once a while just to fix the issue, because you restart half of the times the service is mitigated, fixed, right? The other solution that I've seen often is like you just throw money at the problem, like you just scale resources, half of the problem is gone. Maybe it's not the right way, but we'll look come to that later. Architectural debt, this is something you accumulate over a period of time. You make right choices or you make wrong choices, but you somehow end up figuring that out later eventually, and you don't take a right mitigative planning and a strategy to fix that. And that's what leads to this architectural debt, knowledge debt. It's something, I mean, most of us would have encountered. This is a story when I was an intern at Okta, and my mentor, he told. I mean, I went to him like with some basic questions, and I was like, "Hey, why is this not written somewhere? Like, how do you do this, and how do you basically do the CIS hardening for the servers? And this half of the configurations are here, and I don't know what's really configured out here." It was like, Saurabh, 50% of the things that you see your documentations are correct, maybe 20% of them are wrong, and then rest of the stuff is here. You go out to the people, ask them, figure out, write it on a doc, and maybe that's your intern 2.0 project for you. That's how I was able to extend my internship and get everything, I mean, few of the things in place. But uh, jokes apart, this knowledge debt is a big barrier, and especially when you're dealing with incidences, when you're dealing with like real emergencies, uh, they can really come back and haunt you if things are not written down. If they are not written down in a right consumable format, it's not written down and reviewed by someone, and it's not reviewed at a regular cadence. And how do you basically keep a track of things? There's like at Google, we're like thousands of pages of documentation, thousands, tens of thousands of pages of documentation. How do you keep a track of things? It's very important that these documentation gets reviewed, because things change, things evolve. You have to basically keep a track of whether it is really reflecting what should be done and what is configured and stuff like that. Security debt, I mean, uh, I think most of you might be aware what this really means. It's not a problem until it really explodes. So a single outdated library or a vulnerability can basically impact a company pretty badly. Uh, so along with the SRE side of the story, there's also this business impact. And I fondly call it like a business tax. We call it like a reliability tax. Each a piece of debt that stays unhandled. It's basically it's a unhandled failure mode that you have kept open, uh, and it can fall off someday or the other. It is directly going to consume your error budget, your SLO budgets. As SREs, we are very fond of defining what's the SLO for the service, and we have to stay true to that value. Um, and this really impacts those kind of things. The velocity tax. So with the in last 2 years, I think this is, and it was certainly a thing that was very important, but in last 2 years what I've seen is the velocity of innovation and the velocity of bringing features out has gone up significantly due to AI and bunch of other things. Everyone wants to bring up a new feature out, but at the same time you're also exponentially increasing the tech debt. That, I mean, if a feature has to be brought out or brought out to the public, it also has to be designed in the right way. Wipe coding your startup on a wipe code editor probably would give you a small working prototype, but you probably are also building a big pile of tech debt on the hindsight. And I hope you don't really launch something that is wipe coded. But to some extent, even at larger companies, this is not a very long, I mean, a different story. There are many things which still get wipe coded, and it's just about time that you figure out that this is a revenue impacting thing. Security tax, again, like if you have unpatched libraries, forgotten endpoints, ambiguous ownerships, you're basically leaving open door for many vulnerabilities until something becomes a 0-day vulnerability. So financial tax, as I said, forgetting and leaving servers running for a long period of time, you're really burning real money on real servers, and it's some of the thing that many of us are really working on optimizations these years. Um, so in short, tech debt is not just a technical issue; it's a direct attack on your business's objectives and its bottom line. So this is the most interesting part I want to talk of, is like a case study. So as said, I work for Search. Search as a platform serves millions plus of requests. It has thousands plus of backends. It shelves thousands GBs of protos. Uh, you have to serve requests within certain milliseconds. You have to keep your users happy. At the same time, you have to ensure your platform is reliable. While you're doing that, we have to build a lot of AI features, and we have to talk with different models. We have to do optimizations. So there's a lot going on. It's built over the period of multiple years. Uh, and certainly with the advent of AI, the speed of execution and the speed of basically bringing this new experiences to life has gone up significantly. And over there, I think the rate of tech debt accumulation has also gone up. It's not just because of the new things, but also because of the old things, because over a period of time you have built so much, and then there's no people track of appropriate track of what has really gone in. You end up in a different messy situation, and in order to build something new, you have to get rid of things which were already built. uh, because of AI, we have to make a lot of architectural changes. Different flows are defined. All flows need to be deprecated. So there's a lot going on. So we, to some extent, were tasked with a scenario where find out optimization opportunities, find out scenarios where you could basically save cost for the company. You can basically save on resources. So one of the things that we tackled was how do you really approach this problem? How do you define what the problem is? And what do you really look for? So this is like a very broad domain. Saving on resources, improving your efficiency, reducing tech debt is probably the first thing that you can tackle. So that's where we come to our main thing. Tech debt is always there, but while it is there, how can you convert this into your opportunity to show impact? How do you follow a methodological way to address this problem? And while you're doing this, how do you basically increase the visibility of this project, so that you're not just doing your project somewhere on the corner of the room, but it is visible, and it is rewarded appropriately. So, yep. So again, I'll try to focus on a smaller part of the problem uh, uh, of my experience dealing with a certain problem that I solved, and also how this metrics can really help you solve it. So it's very important to prioritize what you're basically tackling. Now, when I said we had, let's say, a monolithic binary, which was basically backed by, let's say, hundreds and so backends, we realized, hey, you know what? Like X percentage of these backends are really erroring, and no one is really aware of what is really going on. And then we looked deeper, and then we realized, oh, there are some services which are basically just burning on SLOs, and there's no appropriate monitoring for these services. Going deeper, we realized, oh, there's probably not enough, I mean, right owners defined for these backends, because if this service fails, no one is really going to page, because the way most of the services operate are like, uh, I'll probably get to it later. But anyway, so this was the prioritization metrics that I followed, which was dividing into four components. Something you think has a high impact but has a low effort, something you can do quickly, probably put it in the first bucket. Let's call it a quick win. Something that is high impact, but it's going to take a long period of time to basically tackle a major project. You might not be able to solve it yourself by yourself, but you have identified the opportunity. That itself is a win. So identifying that, scheduling it is probably another way of tackling that, and you put it in another bucket. Something that is low effort, but that is like low impact, so it's not really going to make a big dent, and it's probably low effort. Just put it, batch it together so with something else, or probably uh, use it as a filler. Like, you have spare time, you could probably tackle it. Like, so I mean, we can find examples for this, but tackle this during your downtime. uh, Something that is low impact, but it is considerably high effort, deprioritize, don't touch it. It's not probably something that you should be wasting your time on. So with this metrics, it looks very simple, but once you have categorized the problem, you have solved the problem to a good extent. You have more visibility on what you're trying to solve and what are the set of things you should be really tackling to start with. So to my example, we looked at these backends, we came up with a list of backends, we realized, damn, there are like X number of backends which really have these many 20 different issues. So we had to really prioritize them, figure out which are the things that we can tackle in a shorter period of time, and basically come up with a more bubble down list. The second item here is, how do you define from those top list of things, which are the things that would deliver more value. So again, we came up with another approach, like, can you basically have a value driven tech debt identification process, like, a cost to value metrics, basically. Like, let's say you have a you have a job which basically serves 100 different features. Not all features are basically made uh, to serve the most critical functions of your business, right? So there would be certain features which are super helpful, super useful. People use them day in and day out. There are probably some features which are used once a while, but they are super critical. There are probably some features which, I mean, it doesn't matter, like, if you show them, if you don't show them, they are just value adds. So coming up this value add feature list is super important, and that's something we even did for our backends. And then we tried to identify what are the most low hanging fruits, but at the same time what would deliver more value. So coming up this value driven approach basically helps you prioritize out of, I mean, as a second level dimension, to prioritize what would add more value when you basically go forward with this project. Yeah.
How do you quantify the value when payoff is actually reducing risk rather than visible functionality?
Sorry, coming in.
So if the payoff of the tech debt is reducing the risk rather than a visible functionality, then how do you quantify that?
I mean, it all again depends on the feature. Like, if it is reducing the risk, but
it is reducing the risk, there is no way to quantify, right? I mean, if it is a new functionality, you can quantify
Yeah.
in terms of value. But if it is just to aiming to reduce the risk in production, then how do you quantify that? Quantifying is difficult.
Yeah. So I mean, that's where you probably need the metrics. Uh, yeah. I mean, you certainly need metrics, like, what is the trade-off here? Like, deciding on the trade-off is super important, and that something where you draw a thin line on what you should be prioritizing versus what you shouldn't be. Yeah. And yeah.
Yeah, so the question was how to quantify the value of related to the risk. Is that correct?
Yes.
So there you can perform a value at risk calculation, essentially multiplying it's essentially an integral or multiplication between the probability of certain events occurring times the value lost if that
All right.
event occurs. And you can, iterate through the different events that can occur and the different values lost based on those events.
Right. Right. I mean, you can certainly. One way we did some of the things were like, attach.
It was your question. How to
Said-
quantify?
I just want to
Oh, okay.
So that online attendees can.
Can you just repeat?
Yeah, so the question was how to quantify the value related
I
to.
want the speaker to.
Oh. How do you basically quantify the risk and the value of what you're gonna basically get from this ablation, right?
Yeah, the question was how to quantify or evaluate the risk. If the goal is to reduce risk, how do you evaluate that risk?
Yes.
And there's a known calculation or methodology called value at risk that does exactly that.
The risk depends on the probability of certain events, right? As you mentioned.
Yes.
Because you cannot predict what is the probability. So in such scenarios, how do you, what calculation do you base on for finding the value?
It's a very tricky way to address it. Like some of the features, like let's say there is a feature that only gets triggered when there is an earthquake. You get something on the Google. I mean, there is what type of value are we really talking about is very important in this scenario. Like, there is also like a dollar value for each feature that you deliver, right? Certain features you probably see on whatever, like Google, Facebook, or whatever, they deliver more value. If you basically value in what terms is again important. I mean, that's where I said, like, this is a very thin line how you draw it. Like, if this earthquake feature, I would say just get rid of it. Like, it's probably not delivering dollar value, but it is super critical when there is an earthquake, and it probably gets triggered only once a while. So, I mean, that's a thin line. Probably you have to prioritize and come up with like different dimensions on which how do you weight those dimensions. And then one of those would be like criticality, one of those would be high impact, one of those could be like dollar value, which is something very impactful to the business. And then risk factors, like, hey, if you get rid of this, what impact is it really going to have on the overall experience that we are delivering? If there is a feature that I get rid of and then people start losing trust in my service, I mean, that's gonna be detrimental to my business. So I would really don't want to do that. So I mean, that's the reason I said, like, it's the thin line, but it also the metrics that you're weighing against to come up with this what do you say, list of ablations that you're planning for. You can probably get in touch with like different stakeholders or different business holders. There's something I'm going to come through, like, it's not really a what do you say, a tech problem now. It's a business problem, because getting rid of something, uh, as an engineer, I'm like, whoa, this is going to save like 100 GCUs, is going to get rid of like this 100 jobs that I'm running. Boom, like, just do it. And then this feature triggering rate is like less than 10%. So I can probably go ahead and like get this service prioritized, but the business impact, and I don't know, like there are bunch of other privacy impacts and other set of teams which are kind of consider this specific service as more critical. Then you have to basically have this weighted average model, whatever you explained could be a way to address. We kind of did something similar. Yeah.
Think the past data points are.
Yes. Some are prepared, some just tested.
Yeah.
Sometimes there's no golden rule. There are many things which were done by A/B tests. So we ran a lot of A/B tests. We figured out what's the impact. Like there's something doesn't get triggered, hasn't been triggered for a while. Can you just pause it for like 6 months and see if someone is really complaining about, has something really got impacted? If not, get it updated cleanly. If not, keep it running, have it, and then probably put it on your backlog of whatever the fourth box in my priority matrix was, right? When you're confused, probably don't do it. Like that simple as that. But yeah.
We have a question from
Sure.
audience.
Okay.
Being a separate sprint useful just for tech dev?
Running a separate sprint. So the question is, should we be prioritizing tech debt, addressing tech debt while you're doing your day-to-day job? I personally think it should be prioritized. Now, the way you prioritize something is basically by figuring out the impact. If we can evaluate and estimate and like communicate the impact of the work that you're gonna do, and like come up with like a better model, like if we build a feature, it's gonna probably serve this XYZ things, whereas if you don't get rid of this thing, you're probably gonna get impacted by these 5 things. Like it's gonna impact your SLO. Like if this tech debt is directly tied to one of your SLO objectives, when everything is running, things are all rosy great, so no one is really concerned about. But if your SLOs would get impacted because then it's probably should be prioritizing it. So I mean, it's like weighing the different options, even for prioritizing that and then communicating it, and then probably if you could do that, having this as a side project to start with, and then eventually expanding it, adding more people to the project. And that's how basically you show your impact. Like you take up the work, you identify your problem, and then you basically recruit people in your company to get things done. Yeah.
A follow-up question from the same person, Jabu. This is like, who should be prioritizing the tech debt? Because someone feels it is a tech debt for someone, but it may not be for others, right?
Yes.
So who is the right persona in the company to do that?
I think everyone, whoever is kind of dealing with it, has dealt with it. I think there should be a process of reporting it. There should be a process of appreciating if you have reported a tech debt, and there should be a process of basically dealing with it. So it's more like a process question. Setting up this process is very much required, and it also boils down to the cultural aspect, frankly. Like
Who should prioritize? Let's say all the engineers, they bring, hey, this is tech debt. Every engineer might bring 1 point. Like
Yeah.
there are 10 points on the table.
yeah.
Someone has to make a decision prioritizing, hey, this is the right priority, or this is the first one you need to be. So who's the persona to do that?
If you can put a weight on each of the tech debt attributes that you have identified and show the impact or the risk that it could pose, right? I think that's one way to go about it. I don't know, it could be a manager, it could be a director, you could escalate it, you could find the right so most of the projects, at least that I see in my experience, even at Google, they've started as like 10% and 20% projects, and they've grown into like $1 million revenue projects even inside. So I mean, for me, it starts with someone who can own something, do it in your free time, start with it. And if you can communicate the impact to broader community, if you cannot like communicate the problem effectively and efficiently to your higher ups and get the right traction, I mean, then it's not really a problem, right? You're probably missing out on the metrics, because people only get convinced when you can show some potential impact, like, hey, if I get rid of this, which has been haunting us for like last 20 weeks, it has impacted our SLO by X percentage. People, I mean, as an IC, I probably would get convinced, but my manager, my director, my VPs, they love numbers. Like you show them the numbers, they will approve it. And that's how I play my game. Like, if I really want to do something, I'll come up with the numbers. You show the numbers. If those are sufficiently convincing enough, like if I can have one SWE uh, who is probably getting paid like X dollars, and this feature is costing, or this tech debt is basically costing XYZ amount of dollars over a period of N years, that it's worthwhile to get that attribution done in a right way. So that's how, I mean, you put the numbers there and you probably convince the people.
Yeah, thank
Yeah.
Saurabh? Hello, Saurabh?
Yeah, just a second.
There was a remote question here. You may have touched on some of it already, but let me just tell you what it is. The question is, well, it's two-part. Is running a separate sprint useful just for tech debt? And the second part is, who should prioritize tech debt identification, because what might be debt for someone might not be for somebody else? Okay, Venkat is telling me that Venkat is telling me this is already answered. Okay.
Yeah, this was something I answered, which is in a broader way. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, over to you.
I think we touched on something really important, which when you're talking to managers is to have a belief. So they go with problems, they are much less retrospective than if they understand the size and the scope of the solution. So.
Yeah, I totally agree. Yeah, you come up with problems, but at the time, if you have at least a directional way of solving that, that makes their job simpler, and they love to be rubber stamps as much as possible. They have other better things to do, and then if you can eventually show that this was the problem, this was the solution, this is the impact that you brought in, it's a win-win situation for everyone. So yeah, SLO impact. So this is what I was actually trying to explain here. Like, as SREs, we consider SLOs as super important. But again, a flaky deployment script is responsible for 50% of our available SLO breaches. So instead of saying that there's a flaky deployment script, if you come up with a metric that says it has impacted 50% of our available SLO, it is more convincing, it hits the right target, and you can basically get your project moving in a right way. Toil reduction, we covered it in the first part, but basically if we can convince someone like, hey, we should automate it, versus, hey, automating it would save us 10 hours per week per engineer of a critical project, is more impactful. So it's the message that you convey for convincing. Same for incident responses, like, the number of incidences that you deal with, we kind of measure those into, like, mean time to resolution, MTTR ratios. If you can bring down this MTTR ratio by better playbooks, by better management of, like, the set of services that you have, better efficiency, everyone is going to like it. So it's essentially what I'm talking here is about the shift in mindset from cleaning up the mess to basically making more strategic and measurable investments. So that's the goal here. So how do you do this? Like, I started with the story of backends. We came up with the list. We prioritized them. We tried to do some value-added metric calculation. We communicated to our management that, hey, this is probably going to save like 10%, 15% of whatever thing. How do you start this? Like, one, and the most important thing is, you cannot really go off and like just start automating everything. That's probably just not possible, and that's not the right way. You cannot have like X number of hours just spent on like dealing with this. So you start something crappy, you try to figure out if this would be a real value add eventually, and then you basically develop a system for automating it. This something we even did, like, we started something manually. We then designed a pipeline that would start polling the metrics, start automatically figuring out which all backends were erroring, which all backends were breaching the SLOs, which all backends were not really having right owners defined, which all services were not updated. I don't say like the metadata was not updated for, let's say, last 2 years, 5 years. Certain config files were not touched for like X number of months or years. Probably then someone doesn't really care of those services. Do you have a backend registry that is like registering all these services? This is something important. So we tried to identify those loopholes. We came up, we did it manually first, and then we started building a automation pipeline to basically come up with this. Increase the visibility. So again, as I said, like, you doing something in the side and the corner and not really communicating it, it's a different problem. Once you start taking an initiative, as you said, like, if I start doing this as a side project, as a my 20% project, come up with a ablation of a single backend, and if I can widely publicize it and like show people that I have did this thing, this is the approach I followed, this is something like, I did, and like write a documentation, put it out there, you are essentially starting to roll the wheel. People will start following you. Everyone is suffering. It's just like who takes the first stance and like, starts basically taking on the lead eventually. So we kind of did something similar. We had a difficult way of like basically bubbling up this information, but we somehow did it. It was escalated to VPs because, again, not everything is owned by SREs. SREs are like the forefront firefighters standing there, saving your services, ensuring reliability. These backends, the services are owned by like developers, backend teams, I don't know, tens of other places. They are at different geographical zones. They have their different priorities. So pushing to basically get the right traction to get their services updated is a difficult task. If I could just put it in words here, but you have to have a right escalation path, ensure that the communication goes out, and so that this gets prioritized on their plate. It's not like the SREs basically go and like, start deleting services. You can just cannot do that in a larger organization. What we could do is prevent the tech debt traps, improve your CI/CD pipeline, ensure that there is a right way of attributing these services. Like, let's say in case of my backends, whenever a backend is defined, I probably would want to figure out a way so that a new thing is added. Before it even gets added, there should be a plan of deprecation. There should be a plan of basically evaluating it continuously. Like, does it really add value? Does it solve like those 100 like the old metric that we were talking about with like the weighted average? Where does this backend really fall in here? Does it have the right owners defined? Would it get updated? Like, would the metadata would get updated? uh, and if not, would the owners get like paged or like, I don't know, send an alert or something like that? So this can be built in a CI/CD pipeline. So this is something that we as SREs could control. And yep, ensuring that the CI/CD guardrails are in place. Ownership and cost reporting. It is very important that you attribute the, I mean, if you can attribute and figure out who owns a specific component of your service, your half of your problem is already solved. Yeah.
So there is a question from audience.
Mhm.
How is tech debt measured against the solution?
How is tech debt
Measured against the solution.
against the solution? I don't really get that. Like, uh,
Means how is tech debt measured against the solution? So maybe we'll ask for more.
yeah, if you can. Is it like the amount of time you're gonna put for addressing the tech debt, or?
Problem.
Okay, yeah, sure. So what I was saying is, we don't want to be permanent cleanup crews. Like, it's not a day job. Neither it should be like a full month worth of sprint where everyone is focused on getting this thing right. It's more like a systemic and a process issue. And at least as an SRE, my job is like building this immune system in form by evaluating the risk, evaluating the trade-offs, and basically baking this in some form of a CI/CD pipeline, some sort of an automation, so that someone else can really follow those guidelines and processes. Uh, as I said, along with this being a technical problem, this is also a people problem, a communication problem, uh, and also a systemic uh, failure in case you have more tech debt. Addressing this, this is one term that I really like: blameless corrections. Uh, it's it shouldn't be attributed as a personal failure, because each service may be each service is kind of built by one team or the other. Someday it shouldn't be attributed as a personal failure, because it was like a systemic failure. There was this XYZ attribution which was missing, and that's the reason you basically passed through all the guardrails, or we didn't really have these guardrails, and you just came here, and then you are now a tech debt. Is a very different story, whereas addressing the system itself. So focus on what we can learn, not who is to be blamed, and this is very important. There are many features, there are many services which are built by the teams, and those things are very near and dear to them. So you can't really go back and start blaming them. You built something and need to get rid of it. It becomes a very difficult problem to tackle. Uh, the second thing is celebrating unshipping. Many of our places, most of our perf reviews or promotions or bunch of other things are praised for the new features that you have built, uh, new things that you brought up, or new things you address. But basically, if you can publicly praise people for successfully deprecating systems equally as you're building them, I think that makes this culture equally rewarding. People will come up with more ideas, and people will come up with more thoughts, though those might not be prioritized, but you can at least start building an inventory. And this can work for any size company, right? Small company, large company, it can just work anywhere. One of the ideas is tied to promotions, more things you got deprecated, more tech that you address this year, you get promoted. And yeah. So the idea here is deleting code should be celebrated as equally as building new things. um, Reliability and tech debt reduction should be your first class citizen. um, and it should go along with your feature velocity. If you can achieve that, I think it's way easier to manage, maintain, and it's way easier for SREs as me to basically deal with things when you are dealing with a real disaster in production, which can impact basically real revenue, um, or real customer experience. uh, So as I said, tech debt is not a sign of failure; it's an opportunity. It's a gold mine of opportunity. If you don't have enough projects where you don't cannot show enough impact, this is something you can figure out for yourself, convince the people, get the things out, and that's how you build your leadership skills and basically build out your niche project out of it. Something some of us did and really worked out well. So this is a really gold mine of opportunity which often stays neglected. It's just a matter of uh, taking out some time and looking at things from a very holistic and open mindset. uh, Prioritize strategically. You cannot address everything. You are not the sole warrior here. Yeah.
There is a question from, can you give some actual examples of articulating tech debt via metrics to convince management to address them? How can a developer get these measurements for metrics?
Let me think of something. As I understand, what he wants to understand is, how do you frame the problem of tech debt to the management in a most effective way?
And how do we come up with the metrics? Because you need
How,
to show the metrics to show the numbers.
how do you come up with a metric? Yeah, it's a very I mean, it all depends on this one of the slides I covered, right? It depends on the type of problem you're trying to solve. Can you tie it to one of your SLOs? Can you tie it to the amount of productivity loss because of this project or problem, because it is still there? Can you quantify it in a measurable way which your team cares about? I mean, if you start talking of languages like SLOs and stuff to maybe some dev team, which are probably, let's assume that they are not really bothered about whatever SLO for an overall infrastructure is, or overall broader platform is, they won't really be convinced. Like, it's something, the metric that matters the most to that team. You should really put that in those words. That's how, I mean, I can think of.
Yeah.
In case anyone has any idea, like, please feel free to chime in. But it's the currency that works. You should probably use that currency, in my opinion. For us, latency is that currency. If I say, go out and say that this project is probably going to save whatever X milliseconds, I probably would get like um, whatever sponsorship is required to get that project out going. So at each company, at each team, and whichever low level you go, like wherever you are, uh, whatever currency speaks, you probably need to just formulate your tech debt in that currency to explain. Yeah.
Question here. Do you have some kind of template or predefined spreadsheet where you can evaluate those metrics?
I
Like
do.
Google, whatever you want.
I don't have, though we use some of the things, as I said, like, the weighted averages, like, so one of the currency that we used was resource utilization. So that was our, what do you say, North Star. You have to get rid of these many GCUs spent for whatever job this thing is. Can we achieve this target? So each of the tech debts that we identified, we try to tie it to that currency. And if it was, what do you say, significant enough, those projects were getting approved. And it was like, you could like then carve out your own time. You can like basically take your own sprints and like define the projects and get things done. But that's like the North Star metric. I don't have something ready made that you can generically apply, but it's very specific to what your project, your company really thinks is important. uh yeah, prioritize strategically, focus on high impact and low effort wins. If you're lazy, it's okay, but just be very strategic when you're tackling these kind of things. It helps a lot. And it basically, as I said, like, you need not fix 20 tech debt issues. You fix one, you write a documentation, you lay down a plan for the next 100 people who are going to come back after 5 years, and they can basically follow you. And like, that's the way you basically solve this kind of a problem, because you cannot address a tech debt in a single day. And even if you like carve out a single sprint for 1 month, I doubt like you can basically address all the problems in a single sprint or whatever, a 1 month, 6 months. This is going to be a recurring problem. It needs to be solved in a systemic way, to address it better. Quantify the benefit, talk the languages of SLOs or whatever currency matters in your business. uh, Dedicate time. For me, 20% was a great way of tackling it. Companies can have different approaches. It depends on what's your North Star, what you're trying to achieve. If you can basically go out of your way, figure out, come up with the list, and basically prove that this is something important. uh, I think that's how basically you can turn this tech debt into a gold mine of opportunity for yourself. So in short, if you take a structured and an intentional approach, we can convert this tech debt from a source of frustration into a powerful driver of reliability, efficiency, and basically innovation. So the job here is not being a cleanup crew, but we are basically acting as the architects of reliability. um, and that's where I think I should stop. At the end, I would say that you don't really navigate an iceberg by just guessing. You always need a compass, and you always need a strategy to tackle that. That's all.
So one
Yeah.
follow-up question, how can you be sure you can address that debt? What if you fail? What if you fail to address the tech debt? I think that's the question from that.
What if you fail to address the
So what if you let them accumulate and don't address? Maybe later bit.
uh, it will, I mean, it will either come and haunt you, it will go and haunt someone else. I mean, if you don't do anything, I mean, things probably work until you start seeing a small issue popping up and, like, ballooning into something way larger, and then one of the critical services is down, and boom, like, you haven't really updated your BGP or whatever in your data center, and then some of the big social networks are down for like whatever hours. I don't know, like, there are like 100 things that have happened in the last few years. And if you look at the outages, some of them were a, what do you say, just the outcome of some tech debt which should have been addressed but never got addressed. It stayed there, and then small issue turning into big. The only good thing is if you can quantize it early and have this have a way of, like, showcasing, like, if this cannot be addressed now, this is how it can go, and like this can haunt you. You cannot really always predict the future, but at least have a measurable way of showing the impact. Maybe you could at least set a precedence. Even if it fails, it's okay. Like, I tried, I came up with this quantize, whatever the Excel sheet we were talking about. I came up with this valuation metric, and I just set it there because of some other initiative. This got dragged, but now you have created a knowledge material that someone else can basically come in and, like, pick it up in case there is a need in future. So maybe you can, there's always a win, like, just the way you look at the problem.
I have a question about the overall solutions. So what you have presented so far, these are all reactive solutions, right? If there's a tech debt, how do you address and
Right.
what is the benefit?
Mhm.
How about some proactive solutions? Maybe the best way is not to let any tech debt accumulate, right? So are there any strategies like anybody doing things right? So that way to not let tech debt accumulate in the first place.
I mean, this is a very difficult problem to basically ensure that tech debt never gets accumulated. Some way or the other, some form of other, something is gonna get, like, it's always like you always follow the best practices. Something is always going to miss out. Like, it's not like you can always have a foolproof planned strategy, and then it always ends up like, you, let's say, like, you're planning for launching a new service, you bring up this, like, n servers, and then you realize, oh, now the goalpost has changed. Now you also want to bring this service, but you also want to bring up something else. Then you leave this thing, uh, and you move on to something better, and that's how tech debts gets accumulated. It's not like there's a way, a formulated way in which this would always get accumulated. It's like, it's sometimes it's about time, it's about prioritization, and it's about, like, the direction in which we're moving. So
we cannot really control.
You can control, you can basically, as I said, like, build your CI/CD in a way with your available knowledge and information. Like, if you're adding a new backend, like, ensure that the ownership is defined, it is tagged, it is attributed, it is reporting the cost metrics, it is reporting maybe the SLO metrics that are critical for your service and whatnot. And then maybe iterate on it. Like, that's how you harden your service, right? Something is always going to fall off, there's always going to be a loose thread, but then that's how you go back and you fix it.
Your system obsolete, the vendors supporting hardware,
The security that you have no control over.
We cannot, you have 10 packages installed, suddenly someone comes up with a 0-day one, and then you are like, I'm going to address it in next month, and then you have to address it next day. So quite possible.
Yeah, the architectural debt accumulates over years.
Many times it's more like, prioritization, resourcing, like, you don't have more people to address this thing now, let's move on to something better. Or I don't have time to basically solve this problem now, let's leave it, no one is paying attention, let's move on to the next shiny thing, and then you you're basically letting something accumulate. Yeah. Hi.
Follow-up question. Yeah. Are you involved before the feature is released? Are you involved or potentially involved to evaluate the potential future if there is a technical debt or risk for security before it was released, not after? What your questions about prevention?
Yeah. So as an SRE, if you talk about as an SRE, if a SRE team is, yeah, as a job responsibility, if a new feature is built, or I would say new infrastructure component is redesigned or planned, or a new architectural change is proposed, we certainly as SREs are involved in the process, where we to some extent acts as consultants, like, hey, should we doing it, shouldn't we doing that, this is the best practice. If you're setting up a bad eye channel, like, hey, this is how you should be doing it, you shouldn't be like configuring these things in this way and whatnot. So we certainly are involved, but sometimes even we don't have a full visibility of what is really happening. And then, as I said, like, the goalpost just changes, they build it, it is now being served, and then suddenly something shiny shows up, and then they have to like move on to something else, and then no one is maintaining this. So teams change, people leave, people like switch teams, people go here and there, there's always this 50% knowledge debt which they either leave or they carry with themselves. So these are some of the things which we as SREs even cannot handle, I mean, we cannot control. But then when this thing bursts in prod, and then real customers are impacted, we have no way of like figuring out. So we as SREs, we try to ensure that enough guardrails are in place. We are like, there's set of practices and like policies in place, so that even if you, let's say again, go back to the backend. So if you launch a backend, we're gonna get, I mean, you are gonna get alerted for your thing if you don't go and review it every 3 months. Like, that's the simplest example I can put. So that's how we will ensure that through automation. But then if you just don't look at it for another year or so, sometimes we probably are going to get paged, and it's a loss of productivity for all. Yeah.
So before asking you a question, I remember there was an idea that we followed from Google actually to rebuild the entire system from scratch with new hardware, same code base every single year. And that helped a lot to maintain reliability and test that because we knew that yes, the system has issues if you don't build it from scratch, but since you have to do it, you actually have to fix your tech debt. But my question is, do you know if there are any other ways like creating digital twins? I know that some
What's that?
airplane engineers use digital twins of human-made systems to make the same system that answers the same way, but built by AI. Uh, are there any solutions like that you can use for simple systems to think with that?
Are you talking like more like simulation? Like, can you simulate if this thing goes bad? Like,
Yeah, so digital twins basically what they do is that you train a system, an AI system, with the same inputs and outputs as the real system does, so that you can replace it eventually with the digital twin. Are there any solutions like that?
It would be very difficult to. I'm not aware of something like that. It could be great if we would have something, but again, like, we are sitting at a very interesting juncture of 30% technical problem, 20% communication problem, 20-30% maybe something else totally, prioritization problem. uh, Automation can certainly help to certain extent, uh, but again, yeah, uh, I don't know, like, yeah.
You experimented with large code models for like bridging that knowledge gap that you were talking about? So trying to get the 50% out of your head and
Yeah.
update documents,
So
etc.
certainly, I mean, I cannot say a lot about Google, but certainly, to some extent, large language models can help you improve your documentation. They can pinpoint the inefficiencies, and like they can, because now you're training your, again, but you shouldn't be training your large language model with your so-called bad stuff. I mean, so then data sanitization is certainly a thing. But if you have 90% good things, 10% bad things, there's certainly things that can get popped up using large language models, which you can have the right people to either go and fix, or AI can just come up with the right ways of like, hey, the monitoring dashboard is missing here, or it's not really pointing to the right whatever playbook, or the playbook itself is missing. This set of things which were human intensive, labor intensive, time consuming, I think can very much be automated with AI and set of tools out there. It's very easy. I don't think it's a difficult problem.
Start out with a log from your observability and then turn that in, have the AI convert it to a run book.
Right. Yeah. We kind of leverage a lot of monitoring and metrics and observability tools to basically fetch this metrics. But you're right. If we can, instead of writing this automation ourselves, we can like have some model to basically get trained and like come up with this solutions like, hey, this is how you probably should be fixing it, or this playbook needs to be updated in this way. It's probably not resembling what you should be doing, or the instructions are not clear. I mean, this is another thing, like, people write playbooks. Requirement is so high SSRE can enforce that if you have added an alert, there is a playbook. There, I cannot really go back and ensure that the playbook is sufficient enough to basically address and mitigate the situation, right? So that's something you certainly need help with. Testing the playbook is very important. I have seen people coming up with playbooks, writing it, submitting it, someone gets reviewed, it is there, but during the time of an incident, you know how it works. So that's reviewing that somehow with AI could be possible. It's doable. It can have a logical way of like coming up with the steps and like figuring out if it is right or not.
So last time someone asked a question about how is tech debt measured against the solution, right?
Yeah.
So this is what they meant by solution. Can read it out loud.
One is this one.
Yeah.
What I mean by solution is what one has come up with to resolve a tech debt. Since the example shown have numerics, so just wondering how tech debt is measured to have come up with those, or to be proportion to the outcome. So you're basically evaluating the impact of tech debt against the effort that you probably gonna put for basically solving this problem, right? Uh, yeah, like, I mean, I think the language of SLOs is the only way to deal with this problem. Um, and then having more like a statistical calculation, like, hey, if this is or projected calculation, like if this is now, this is how it is haunting us now, and probably it could go bad to this stage, probably could be a way that not all tech debt can really be measured. Frankly, it can just measure the impact of the tech debt if it really goes bad, if you put it that way.
Yeah, I think that's all the questions from the participants also.
Awesome.
Any other questions? All right, yeah. Thank you so much. Thank you. Okay.
Thank you.